we have got a huge problem, a cultural problem and an economic one. It's this craziness about global warming. It's like the craziness really about this virus as well. The way you've got a scare that's based on dodgy modelling, wild predictions of catastrophes that don't actually come, and a one-sided media fear campaign where the truth doesn't seem to matter. Well, the global warming fear campaign is about a climate catastrophe that no one can actually point to. I mean, the world's temperature is barely increasing. Grain crops, meanwhile, are setting world records. The planet is actually getting greener. Rainfall in Australia has actually increased over the last century. Cyclones have decreased. Low-lying atoll islands, nearly half of them are actually getting bigger, not smaller. They're not drowning. And meanwhile, life expectancy keeps rising. Now, if you think this is a catastrophe, well, you might just be insane. Catastrophes should all have us living longer and better and healthier. Yet our schools are producing, year after year, children who instead think that we are living through a climate apocalypse. Children led by child prophet Greta Thunberg.
People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction.
It's simply not happening, but as I've said yesterday, we've had generations now of school children already being shown and scared by Al Gore's propaganda film, An Inconvenient Truth. Do you remember that? With its fake claims of polar bears drowning and islands sinking and more cyclones smashing us. It was so dishonest, yet it got, what, an Oscar? And I saw in schools, this film was being shown to students as the gospel truth. No matter how many exaggerations and falsehoods it said, this was the truth unquestioned in schools. And now there's a new film called 2040, which the Liberal government actually helped to fund, God knows why, the idiots. And this again is being shown in hundreds or even thousands of schools, again telling students that the world is headed for disaster unless we switch to the green agenda.
My name is Damon, and this is my daughter Velvet. Soon, she'll have to face a rapidly deteriorating environment.
The ice sheet is now melting faster than the scientists predicted.
So it's no wonder that we've managed to have so many children produced by our schools that are terrified about the end of the world.
I'm so concerned with the fact that if they're not going to change anything, then what's going to happen to humankind? What's going to happen to the whole world?
Look, again, that's not true, but you've got activists and teachers and journalists too, politicians, the Greens. They've been so good at scaring children, indoctrinating them, that these children are taking to the streets and demanding a fundamental change of everything that has made their life so comfortable.
We all know why we're here, to urge our politicians to take immediate action against climate change. So let's put Adani front and centre now, and in the lead up to the election, and make this our line in the sand. Hashtag stop Adani for our future, and do it now. So today we're a part of a global movement. Strikes are being held in 250 locations across the world. In Australia...
Adults are feeding this hysteria, of course, have been preaching doom and particularly demonising coal. It's responsible for a lot of our emissions, but coal, of course, is also responsible for giving us the cheap coal in which we built a terrific manufacturing base until lately, employing so many people and making us richer. And this demonisation has had an effect, particularly on the weak-willed and the clueless. Even the Morrison government, supposedly liberal, supposedly having won the climate election, is so terrified by this hysteria that the Liberals have done, well, almost nothing at all to counter it for, I'd say, all this century. And so we've got ourselves into this bizarre situation. Here we are, Australia, about the biggest exporter of coal in the world, $70 billion a year. That's money that pays for our hospitals, pays for our police, pays for our defence forces, our pensions. We're digging up all this coal, shipping it out to people around the world, and now we're too scared to use it ourselves, at least for electricity. In fact, thanks in part to policies that kill coal-fired power, we've actually been blowing up our own coal-fired power stations, leaving us short of cheap and reliable electricity, and that's about to get a whole lot worse. Greens policy, or global warming policies, are making it now not really worth fixing up the older coal-fired power stations, and we've lost a third of them, and we're about to lose more, like the giant Liddell station in New South Wales. And this is one big reason electricity prices are so high, when they were once so low that manufacturers thought, beauty, in Australia we can make money, let's set up there, create jobs and get going. Now, of course, heavy users of electricity, that's a mug's game. Our big smelters, for instance, are thinking about getting out. Can you imagine the impact that would have on us and a number of towns like Portland? But get this, the Morrison government is now so spooked by all those Green voters that our schools have been producing for years now, for decades or two, that it this week produced an energy plan that really, and ignore all the spin, in fact, it ran a mile from any new coal-fired power station in this country. The cheapest, most reliable coal you can get. That runs 24 hours. That doesn't just end when the wind stops blowing and the sun stops shining. It's so crazy, this Liberal plan, that it's got the government saying, well, we might instead build a gas-fired generator in the Hunter Valley and build it right on top of huge, cheap coal deposits. Can you believe it? We've got the coal, but we then build a gas plant instead, right on top of it. And to fuel it, we have to drag in gas supplies from hundreds, thousands of miles away. Seriously, that's how insane we now are. We export coal and don't dare to use it ourselves. Not for future generation. Let me show you how crazy that is. China right now, first half of this year alone, just about finished building 57 coal-fired power generators to produce more electricity, just these new ones, in just this half year, produce more electricity than Australia's total power network. So we're getting rid of our coal-fired power stations that still make up, what, 2/3 of our power. We're making ourselves poor, while China, the world's biggest emitter, is making itself richer. Do you know how suicidal that is? In fact, in the last 20 years, the world has doubled the capacity of electricity generators that are coal-fired. Doubled it. India's building lots of these coal-fired plants. Japan plans to build about 20 more. Even Germany, green Germany, is building one. And these are generators that often use our coal, which we think will be too sinful to use ourselves in the future. As I said, 2/3 of our power still does come from coal. But the crazy Labor Party, or its crazy energy spokesman, Mark Butler, this week said that coal is so yesterday, so dangerous, that we must scrap it. He says coal and gas won't underpin continued prosperity, whether for Australia or the rest of the world. Has he told China that? They don't seem to see the world as he does. So here we are. Schools pushing wild green propaganda, children coming out of those schools crying with terror, demanding we scrap our cheap electricity, totally remake this advanced economy that we have, weak politicians caving in, you and business then copying the higher electricity costs, suffering, economy getting weaker, the climate not changing. But you've got China sitting back, getting stronger, thinking, great. Us stronger, Australia weaker, win-win for China. We will regret this one day, of course. But I think it'll be too late.